Hey everyone, welcome back to Wild and Unprotected. Today's guest is a viral TikTok sensation. I think this will be a really fun conversation. On the show today, we have Jessica Carroll, the president of the Cassowary Conservancy out in Florida. Hey, Jess.
Hello. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to recording this one.
Yeah, me too. It's been a little crazy with everything going on, but I'm so excited to be doing this.
Yeah, this will be a good one. I'm excited too. The TikTok that you went viral through got shown to me, and at that moment I was like, I have to have this organization on Wild and Unprotected, and this is going to be an absolutely crazy episode. So stoked to have you here.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. I'm really excited. It's hard to even have words.
So you guys are out in Fort Pierce, Florida, correct?
Yes.
So, being from Florida myself, I know there's quite the interesting stigma about Florida and the animals that are in Florida. And I think the first question that I got asked when I had mentioned that I was going to do this podcast was, are they really Jurassic chickens? Is that what a cassowary is? So I think that's a good place to start talking about what cassowaries are.
What is a cassowary? Cassowaries are the cousin to emus, ostrich, and rhea. And so they're a large flightless bird. They can stand anywhere from 5 to 6.5 feet tall, but they are the closest living relative to the dinosaurs that is still existent on the earth at this time.
That's just crazy to hear, especially since there's been such a gap between, dinosaurs and animals in existence now. You hear all the time people talking about, alligators are relatives or whatever it may be, whatever example they throw out. But to know that the cassowary is the closest, that's pretty insane.
That is how it was explained to us. So that's where the Jurassic chicken phrase comes into play.
I think that's going to end up being the title of the episode is Jurassic Chicken.
We call them murder birds.
Well, that's a good one too. I wonder if we would get though for that title.
I don't know. I actually did start a video, like an episode series called Murder Bird Monday that is on YouTube, and some of them are on TikTok and whatnot, but it was basically going over cassowary stuff, and I need to restart it up. It just got so crazy with everything else that's been going on, but it was a fun series, just trying to keep simple and small. Some episodes were longer than the others, depending on what content was and what was being gone through. But yeah, Murder Bird Monday.
That is awesome. I'll have to check that out. I did not know. Excited to see it. Well, maybe I might have to steal that title. I think that's a good transition point, though, to talking about. You said you're so busy at the Conservancy, and let's talk a little bit about what the Conservancy does.
So our main day-to-day basis is, of course, animal care is the priority, and everything is pretty much structured around animal care, feeding, watering. We do have a grocery store that donates produce that they would otherwise throw away. So we do have 2 of those pickups to do daily, and then all of those barrels of fruit and produce we get in has to be sorted, and fruit is cut for the cassowaries, and all the animal diets are made up and then ready to be fed to all the animals once they're prepared. That, believe it or not, takes a large portion of the day. Our cassowaries are fed between 3 and 5 gallons of cut fruit per bird per day, along with supplements. So we have 13 adult cassowaries here right now, and you can imagine 13 5-gallon buckets can take quite some time to come up with. We do get volunteers occasionally, and then people who have community service hours to complete, which is great. We feel very fortunate to have those people. But a lot of the days I am here by myself doing all of that. So it does take the majority of the day to get everything done. Once the animals are fed and watered, I do things like check fences, make sure there's nothing that needs repairing so that the animals are safe. That's obviously a main concern here, is making sure animal safety is up to par. Extra time goes into making videos for things like TikTok, which is our viral video, which just kind of happened on a whim. I just recorded going in to get a cassowary egg one day, and never thought that would be the video that went crazy.
Yeah.
But I have been trying to pay more attention to social media just to get our name out there. And that's kind of part of our mission, is educating about the cassowary. Social media being such a big thing in today's society, that's a great avenue to post videos and even pictures and information about these animals and the conservation efforts, why we're doing what we're doing. You know, some of our bigger goals or long-term goals, we have been in need of putting up a 8-foot perimeter fence. That's not only for the safety of the animals, but safety of people that might be wandering around and could wander in through a lower fence. Have our goal to be open to the public was actually supposed to happen a year or two ago, but it has been stalled. But that is still something we'd like to do, because we believe that being able to see these animals up close and learn about them on an educational tour is going to have more of an impact to people wanting to help them and learn more about conservation efforts. And there's a lot of people that don't even know what a cassowary is. They've never heard of it. So to be able to do something like an educational tour is something we think would be immensely helpful in the continuation of the mission.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's something, there's something to be said about getting people involved or in front of an animal like that allows them to connect a little bit more. And in this particular situation, for an animal that's so unknown, and obviously, I think, to tie it back to the TikTok video that went viral, I think the reason that it went viral is that it was so unknown and it caught so many people off guard, just the egg itself on top of the bird, which sparks interest, which brings questions. And I think allowing people to interact with them, maybe not, obviously not in close proximity, but in an educational tour way, I think will be huge for the conversation and conservation of the animal. So that's
Yes.
excellent. One shout out I did want to do before we get too far ahead of ourselves is the grocery store that you pick up food from. Haley, as a Florida boy myself, anytime I visit Florida, I have to go back to this specific grocery store. It's Publix. So shout out to Publix and everyone that enjoys pub subs. Thank you, Publix, for providing the meals for these animals. It's excellent. Jess, I don't know if you want to say anything for Publix. We can shout them out on here. We can give them free pub. It's pun intended there. It's great for you guys. Great for them. I'm stoked that they are supporting you guys the way they are.
Yeah, we are severely in debt to them. They are the only grocery store that will do this, and it is basically on a store basis. We've been involved with them going back at least 15 years. So we've been around quite some time. We know the people in the store. We tell them, they're invited to come out and see the animals as a part of their thank you for, making our barrels and putting the fruit in and all that stuff. We are really, really appreciative of what we get from them. All the guys and girls are great there. They love that the food is going to the animals instead of getting thrown away. It makes them, it has more of a purpose that they get to put it in that barrel and it's going to be used instead of to the dump.
Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer for most grocery stores. So that's wild to me that Publix is the only one, and it's kind of on a store-by-store basis. I mean, the food's just going to go to waste anyway, so why not go towards helping out an organization? And you could even use that as a tax write-off.
They can't do that because. No, because the IRS considers produce to be either good where it needs to be sold, or it's bad and it is garbage. So you cannot use that particular food product as a tax write-off. So they're getting nothing in exchange for this donation to us, other than the fact that they know it's not going in the garbage. Not to stray too far, but there was a time when the other grocery stores also donated product to random people who had animals, nonprofit organizations, whatever. And when they started donating to like food places that provided food for the homeless or any human organizations, they got sued. And that's why they had to cut it. They got sued for somebody eating something bad that wasn't supposed to be eaten, or whatever the case may be. And that's why all the programs got cut back.
That makes sense. I honestly thought that would be tax write-off for more organizations, but it makes sense. We live in such a crazy litigious society anyway that'll sue over anything, so it makes sense.
Anything where someone can make $1.
Yeah, well, it looks like the audience isn't the only one learning things today. It would be the host of the show. It goes a long way. Well, I think one of the topics that I really, really want to discuss is more about the animals themselves. You said that people don't really know what the cassowary is, and the goal of the Cassowary Conservancy is to open up, to the public one day. Let's talk about the animals themselves and what they are.
Well, one of the reasons that most people don't know what they are is because cassowaries are only native to a small island in the South Pacific called Papua New Guinea. They're also native to a very small portion of a beach in northern Australia. So many people think of them as Australian. Now, there are 3 types of cassowary. There is the northern cassowary, the southern cassowary, and the dwarf cassowary. The southern cassowary is the most well-known, I'm going to say, even though it's not very well-known. But that is the cassowary that inhabits both Papua New Guinea at the south side of the island and the northern beach area in Australia. So if you were to see a cassowary here in the U.S., if you were to see one in a zoo, you're going to see a southern cassowary. There are a few zoos that have them. People do see them at zoos. I believe there's even a Reddit list of zoos that have cassowary.
Yeah, I actually saw one just the other day on Monday for the first time. I was I was at the San Diego Safari Park in northern San Diego County and saw it for the first time. I'd been to that safari park a couple times and honestly never really looked into it. Just passed by the enclosure. Since we were doing this episode, I wanted to look into it just a little bit more and saw it for the first time. And holy shit, that is a big chicken.
Yes. And I think why people, they earn the name Jurassic chickens and murder birds is when people think about chickens or roosters in particular, they have that spur. Like if you know anybody that has a "I was chased by a rooster" story, they're going to talk about that spur if they got hit, because those things can cause some damage. Cassowaries don't have a spur like a chicken, but they have 3 toes just like an emu. On an emu foot, they have 3 toenails that are pretty much exactly the same. All those toenails can be sharp and they have powerful legs. An emu is going to do nowhere near the damage that a cassowary is going to do. When you look at a cassowary's foot, you'll see 2 toenails that look just like an emu's, and then the inside toe on each foot has a straight blade like toenail that can be over 4 inches long. And they have been known to tuck the other 2 toes so that one toe is what's pointed out at you when they kick. So they would actually kick you in a stabbing motion. Now you have 4 inches or better of a knife-like object cutting into you when they kick at you. And this is what earned them the name murder birds. Behind that powerful kick, you have this stabbing appendage, and they're not going to stop. If you are a threat to them, they are going to come at you.
That makes sense why they get called murder bird. And I also think it sounds like this bird would do very well in prison.
They brought their own shiv.
This is wild.
But surprisingly, there are not many deaths on record from cassowaries. There are some videos on social media, one in particular of a cassowary. Some people are trying to have a picnic at a beach in Australia, and the cassowary is like leaning over the lady's shoulder trying to get her food. And she just stays very calm and doesn't push it away, just kind of, pushes slightly with her body to keep it back from the food. And I remember there were some people on social media like duetting or whatever you call the videos and saying, this is insane. Like, does this look like they never see these birds? Like, I would freak out and run, some people said. And it makes sense, but they're not, unless you are cornering this animal or trying to attack its young or invading its space in some way, that is what's going to make them aggressive. In the wild, captive animals are in a much different situation than a wild animal and are going to react much differently because they've been conditioned to captivity. Some of our birds are I have one bird that is extremely aggressive. She hates everybody. She wants to kill you if you're near her pen. That's the bird I was in with on the video. So I was actually surprised that she acted, she behaved so calmly. That was a very calm Lucky. Her name is Lucky. So that was a very calm demeanor for her that day. There is another video on TikTok of her it's got some music and it's her just hitting the fence. I'm just standing there with the phone on and she's just just keeps hitting the fence. Not like extremely, but she does kick at the fence a number of times. And there was one comment that was like, "Why are you harassing her?" And I'm thinking, I'm just standing here with a camera. Like, I'm not doing anything to this bird. I'm just standing here. But she is a bird that is extremely territorial. So when I am around that enclosure or I'm doing something in an enclosure next to her enclosure, I'm always have, my peripheral vision is always going because I have to know where she is, especially if I'm close to a fence line or whatever is happening. The birds are powerful enough. You've seen our videos. When we got them, we actually were able to obtain all the fencing that they were in at the last facility. So we took the fencing down, moved it, put it back up, and then put the birds in. So they have been kept in this same fencing for 15 to 20 years, some of them. They are flightless. They can jump very high, but they cannot clear a 6-foot chain link fence, which is what we keep them in. The chain link is pretty solid. It's pretty tight. We run it we stretch it as far as we can and cinch it down. Lucky was able to, at the last facility, she was in a corner pen and there was a gate at the corner that you had to walk through to access the rest of the enclosures. And there was a gentleman, it was one of the owners, he was walking through that gate and he wasn't paying close enough attention and he came too close to that side. She rushed the fence, kicked the fence, bowed it 3 feet, and broke his arm on the other side. So that is the best story I could tell you about how powerful these animals are. And so all of our volunteers, any community service people, anyone that's here, the first thing they're told is they are not to come within 3 feet of the cassowary fencing.
Yeah, that makes sense as to why.
Yeah. So, and then of course, sorry, I was just going to say, if they do get that one claw through, you could still get a pretty significant stab wound on the other side as well, because it is just chain link. It's not, it's big enough for them to get that stabby claw through that chain link and get you.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's a enclosure like what you would have at the zoo. So steer clear.
Yeah, no, we actually we want to make them bigger enclosures so they have more space, but at least they've got, the chain link enables us to run something on the larger size. Obviously, we don't need a full zoo type setup. We're not going to have visitors of that magnitude. So
see, you say that now, and then you have another TikTok video that goes viral, and you have more people than you know what the hell to do with. You reach capacity like Disney, and you have to push people away and say, "Sorry, no Jurassic chickens for you today."
But at that point, we would have probably more revenue to be able to set up more fancier enclosures as the time goes on too. So it's, one hand helps out the other.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything will go into providing better, more expansive enclosures for the animals.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see that, as you guys grow. You have such an amazing vision, which I know we'll get to here later in the episode. And I'm really hoping that, some of the content that's created, even from this episode of the podcast to videos that, I hope continue to go viral as your audience grows, that really translates into, impactful changes for the animals that you have on site.
Yes, me too, for sure.
Well, I think it's a good spot to move into the next segment of the show and start to learn about you a little bit. And let's start with how you got your start within wildlife and how you got to where you are now.
Lord, let's see. I have always had a passion for animals. Like, as long as I can remember, ever since I was a little tiny Jessica, I befriended a wild bunny in the backyard of our New York house. And my mom was astonished that this wild bunny would bring her children to me. But if anyone else walked out in the yard, she was gone. Her and all the kids would leave. Once we moved from New York to Florida, there was a lot more animal opportunities here than in New York. And I moved here from New York when I was 11, so I was very young. Within the first year, I had brought home my first snake, which my mom was just petrified of. Within a year after that, and I just love the way my dad tells that story, because he had to go back and forth to New York to close out the sale of our house and other business things he had up there. He says, I left for 3 months. I come back home and there's 150 rats in my garage. And I had collected some snakes. I collected some rats, figured I didn't want to buy rats to feed to the snakes, and just started making my own rats, to the point that I had like a mother rat with her babies in my shower. My dad was livid.
My God.
Livid. And then I had a rat that had babies next to the bed in a shoebox, and she took all the babies out and hid them under the bed. Yeah, I tortured my parents. Looking back, they probably were didn't know what to do with me. But I went to high school. I got in trouble for bringing snakes to high school in my backpacks. I always had an animal with me. I always had something. But in high school, I became friends with a kid that his father ran a he started a wildlife center. And he was licensed for everything. And so I went to his house, and he had all this stuff in his backyard. And he actually, somebody had found a baby screech owl, and I got it and was bringing it over there. And he told me that this would be great. I was about 16. I was 15 at the time. I didn't quite have my license. And he told me this would be a good experience for me to raise the owl, because I was about to intern with the wildlife center. And he told me I could raise the baby owl and then bring it there for my internship, and it could go in the owl pen. It would be the right time. So he gave me this bag of frozen baby chickens that I had to feed to this owl. And I literally it was a tiny, tiny owl. So I had to cut up the little chicken and feed it to the owl. My mom freaked out. I was thawing a baby chicken on her counter. She lost it. And my response was, but that's where we saw the big chickens. So I interned at the wildlife center. They gave me 4 more owls to bring to the wildlife center for my first day of internship. And I got pulled over on the way there and got held on the side of the road while the officer checked that I was supposed to have these owls. And they were indeed going to the wildlife center, because owls are a severely protected species here. Yeah. So I was late to my first day of internship because of that. But, and then actually I got there, and he had found out about my fondness for reptiles. The first thing he said to me was, I heard you like snakes. And I'm like, yeah. He said, well, I have this job that none of my other volunteers or anybody wants to help me do. And he took me up these stairs into this room. It was about 12 foot by 12 foot with 3 shelves completely encircling the room except for the door. And it was all venomous snakes. And that was our job for the day, was one of us would hold a venomous snake while the other one cleared out the cage and cleaned everything. And then we put him back in. So it was pretty much my whole first day at the wildlife center.
I wonder what job you got.
Yeah. So I kind of went, I was really, really big into reptiles when I was younger. I still love reptiles. They've always been a passion. But, that evolved into working with the wildlife centers. If I had a chance, I was volunteering. If they just needed me to pick up an animal that somebody had found and run it in, I did that. I started working with animals in any capacity that I could. I worked at pet stores when I was younger. Anything that I could do to work with animals, that's what it was. So I did end up working with some of the wildlife centers. The most recent one was in the area, and that is actually how I ended up moving into Cassowaries. I had a guy come in there that needed to do community service hours, and he was working with the Cassowaries at the time, and he wanted to move, but he was looking for somebody to fill his position at the Cassowary facility. So he brought me over and introduced me to the owners, and they really wanted to make sure they had somebody come in that had large predator experience. And meanwhile, I'm at a wildlife center working with panthers and bobcats and all sorts of things. So I came over and met them. Anybody that works with predators knows that there's a line, there's always that line of respect that you don't want to cross with the animal, because that's where you tilt the scales and that's where you're at risk of an attack. people that don't work with animals on a regular basis may not understand that fully. It's a lot different when you're working with a house cat than when you're working with something that can actually kill you. So because the cassowaries, their body language is not always discernible. They wanted to make sure they had somebody there that was going to be watchful, that was not going to cross that line, that was not going to cross their line of rules, because they had their own rules. You're not allowed in the enclosures. If there's an egg that you can't get to from the outside of the fence, and you have to come get one of us and we'll go do it together, and that's all just for safety, which I completely understand. But apparently in the past they had people that didn't get hurt to a point where it was very severe, but weren't able to recognize that they were crossing a line with the bird. They thought it would be okay. And they wanted somebody that they could go on vacation and they knew that everything was going to be in good hands while they were out of town or whatnot.
Are the owners still involved now?
No. I do talk to one of them still. He lives very close by. The other one retired and moved out of state. So they, it's like what happens when you get older. You have different dreams sometimes, and they moved on and went with what they really well. The one gentleman that lives down the road that is close by, he will come visit periodically. He definitely loves the birds, and they were his passion more than the other ones. So it's nice that he's close enough by. He keeps tabs. He calls me. We talk. So that's great. I'm all for that. He didn't really want to give up the birds, but sometimes it gets to a point where you're just at that age where you can't continue by yourself. Is something that I honestly think about. I have to keep in mind I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm only going to be able to do this for so much longer. So I hope that somebody comes along that has the passion that I have for these animals and wants to be in this position, wants to be their caregiver and take over what I'm doing and keep the mission alive. That's our hope for the future, that younger people get involved and keep our dream going.
I think that's an important piece to the puzzle that, in organizations like this often gets, overlooked or just not discussed about enough, is the next generation. Everyone is so sucked into social media and, either climbing a corporate ladder or whatever it may be, that organizations like the Cassowary Conservancy often get the next person, it continues to grow and you have a larger staff to pull from.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not going to say it's an easy ask. It's a difficult ask. You give up your life to do something like this. It's not, very often there is financial difficulty. Any money I make goes into the animals as well as the money that the nonprofit brings in. We generally don't make money in the sense of, that we have extra revenue to spend on the finer things in life. Everybody that I know that is in an organization that is like-minded in this kind of genre, like I know a guy that does bears, I know another guy who does tigers. It's a financial black hole. I mean, every dime goes into the betterment for the animals. We live very simply and we're happy like that. But that's not most people. And it is a very, somebody might have the interest and the love for the animal, but they're just not willing to give up the silver spoon, so to speak. Like they want the Gucci purse or the Prada shoes, or I don't even know if Prada makes shoes because whatever, but I'm like Walmart, baby, all the way. Yeah. I do have to say though, it's such a weird thing to say, but my life is very simple. Like I have friends that are like, oh my God, I got my nails done, or I did get my hair, or whatever. I'm like, I cut my hair myself last night in the bathroom mirror. Like that's what I do. I don't really care. I'm not, everybody is so caught up with how they look or how they appear to others. My friends will actually tell you, be like, oh yeah, go meet Jessica. Just be aware. Like she probably won't wipe the dirt off her face before she greets you. Like she's going to be a mess because she's out working. And that's the best way to describe me. And you know what? I am perfectly fine with that because I am not here to make a certain impression upon anybody other than the conservation efforts on the cassowaries. If you'll listen to me talk about them and learn about them, and you're cool with, you know, what I tell you, asking questions, we have some back and forth. I don't care what I look like, or if that I'm a mess, or I was just, you know, working with the hose in the water and I'm completely soaking wet and we're walking around. I don't care, because this is my ultimate passion. Like, I absolutely love what I do. And I think my life it's very complicated because of the animals, but it's also less complicated because I'm not trying to keep up with the rest of society. So there's all these things on the outside that I just don't worry about. My only worry is this organization and these animals.
Yeah, and honestly, that right there, it, you know, so I appreciate do so, you know, moving forward, because there's that genuineness that comes from a person, I think, is really what attracts people to conservation. Outside of, you know, the crazy eggs that might come from cassowaries, things that are really cool, but the genuineness of the people that work within these organizations, I think, is an important factor in introducing that next generation. So thank you for being you.
Well, thank you. I know, you know, especially in more recent times, it's gotten a lot harder because part of human nature is to, I guess, get whatever you can for yourself. It's a selfish type of survival mechanism. So that has bred a little bit of like, take it. If you're not given it, take it type of attitude. And there are a lot of quote unquote organizations or nonprofit type of places that have given other organizations a bad name for what they've done in the past. And that can be very unfortunate for those of us that are in it for the right reasons. So I don't want to go into a whole big thing. Just if there's people out there that really want to help an organization, my recommendation to them is that there are places that you can look for information. You can check with the IRS to make sure they are a actual bona fide 501c3 organization or a 501 type organization that is nonprofit designated through the IRS. You can check at your state level. Usually there's a consumer affairs office that you're supposed to be registered with in order to legally solicit donations. These type of things are a good way to start your checking to make sure you're donating to a legitimate organization. And then, of course, you want to check their website and look at their background and, you know, talk to people on their social media or watch their social media. But I think it's unfortunate that people that want to help are stopped from helping because they're afraid they're going to give their money to a bad cause. So I just want people to know that there are ways out there to check that sort of thing so that you can be comfortable making your donation to an organization that you think is making a difference in an area that you want to help.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Vetting organizations is something that's kind of difficult. I mean, even for us, like at Wildscape, we're listed and registered as a 501c3 nonprofit, but you know, we want to be very careful with who we work with. So even we're hesitant,
Right.
and we take, you know, really great pride in the process that we have for working with different organizations. You know, the process that you went through with our discovery calls to make sure that there's a right fit, and you know that the organization themselves are legitimate, and you know, people that we would want to partner with. It's a really important thing, and it does hold a lot of people back.
Yes. And we are, even though we are not open to the public, if we have a donor that either wants to bring a donation or has donated in the past and wants to come see the facility, we do not say no to that. We have an open door policy in that respect. We're not trying to hide anything, which is where I think the videos do help to shed light on, you know, was I the nicest person to the bird in the video that went viral? No, I was yelling at her, and I've got quite a few comments. People like, you're being so mean to her. You're taking her baby. You just think she's going to let it happen. You know, and the best thing I can say is I'm not out there yelling at the birds every day, which is why the yelling works when I do it when I'm in the pen with them. If I yelled at them every day, she would not have that pause in her reaction and be like, what is going on? And I've been explaining that to people in the videos. And again, we have plenty of videos out there. You can look and see when I'm out there generally interacting with them, I'm not screaming at them. But again, I'm not trying to hide anything either. That's a regular egg collection process. That's how it went. It just is. It is what it is. But I'm also not trying to get killed. So
It's kind of an important piece.
if a loud noise or me, like I could yell, stop it, or I could yell, eggs and Benedict. It doesn't matter to her what I'm saying. She doesn't understand me.
I'm sure every single person that was commenting, you're being so mean, if they were in the pen and had that same situation, I'm sure they would fucking yell too.
Yeah. And fortunately, I have pretty thick skin at this point. I've been in nonprofit for 20 years or more. I've been working either running my own nonprofit or dealing with nonprofits. I've come to realize that a lot of people say things because they don't understand. We have this whole keyboard warrior regime going on out there. People have forgotten that they can just as easily ask a question than respond rudely to what is going, with what is going on in their mind at the time. So I just respond like they asked me a question. And most of the time they come back and say, thank you so much for explaining that to me and whatever. But there's, especially with cassowaries, because people are coming to see this video and they have no idea what this bird even is, much less what's an appropriate way to interact with them, or, that mom really doesn't care about that egg because dad's the one who sits to incubate the eggs, raises the chicks, hatches and raises the chicks. So in the video, I say she only guards the egg for 24 hours. And so there's been some comments that too, you couldn't wait till the end of the 24 hours. Well, no, because then dad has it and it's way more stressful to take it away from him. He pouts. She doesn't care. She's like, I'll lay another one. So you have to get to that point too. There's just a lot of information that's not given in the video. So people tend to make assumptions. And that's, for me, that's kind of the goal, because that if there's, whether they're asking a question or they're saying something aggressively, I'm going to respond and they're going to read it, which means that they're going to learn something. So to me, any interaction is a positive interaction.
Press is good press.
Yeah, I had to really learn that, the whole PC thing, when I started being in nonprofit. And I actually, my nonprofit started as a pet pig rescue because Florida has more pet pigs than pretty much any other state in the U.S. So we dealt with a lot of people like, why isn't that breakfast or ham or bacon? The way that I taught myself to be PC was that guy that comes up to us at an event where we have a pig present and wants to talk like that. My goal is now to get money from him. I want to turn you around, make you see my point, and I want you to give us a donation. That's how I learned, because once I did it once, I'm like, oh my God, I can teach people stuff and I can get us a donation to help out with what we're doing. That is the ultimate goal. If I can be that person, that's going to get us further in the long run.
Well, speaking of goals, I know you have a big goal, personally.
I do.
That's to be able to go out to Papua New Guinea, correct?
Yes. Not only would I like to visit the island, and I'm going to digress real quick because I did mention earlier that there are 3 types of cassowary. So Papua New Guinea is the only place that you will find all 3. And I also mentioned the southern cassowary is at it lives natively on the southern side of the island. The northern cassowary is at the northern side of the island. And the dwarf cassowary inhabit the mountainous regions in the middle of the island. So it is the only place in the world that you can find all 3 cassowary breeds. So not only would I like it would be my dream to visit Papua New Guinea and be able to sit and see cassowaries in the wild, but we did recently come in contact with a gentleman who has a contact in Papua New Guinea. And that contact, he's a native, and he had found a native woman that had a cassowary that had been caught in a snare. This was a young bird, most likely a dwarf cassowary. It did lose its foot because it was caught in the snare trap. The gentleman was able to somehow procure the animal from her. I don't know if he paid for the animal or what, but they had a video where they took the animal into the woods and let it go. Theoretically, this is a great idea. Realistically, that bird is probably not going to survive. It was maybe a 1 to 2 year old bird. It was very small. It should still be with its dad at that time in its life. So it's learning foraging and getting away from predators, and it's missing a foot. So the thought had occurred to me, because the gene pool is so small with the limited amount of cassowaries left on the island, we really can't risk losing any more due to something of this nature. My ultimate dream would be to go to Papua New Guinea and set up a small conservation zone where an animal like that the natives had caught, maybe was injured, could live within this conservation zone. And we'd probably fence it in. We would provide, extra food. They would learn to forage, but we would provide extra food so that they could thrive, and maybe do something like what in wildlife we call a soft release, which is where you open a door and the animal is free to come and go, so it can come back to eat and drink until it feels safe in the wild and living on its own in the wild. I feel that this is a very important step, because the gene pool, the more cassowaries that get killed or die off, the gene pool is going to shrink. And similar to what's happened here in Florida with the Florida panther, they say there's probably only about 200 Florida panthers left. That gene pool is very, very small, and it's been very, very small for a long time, which means that there's been a lot of inbreeding within that panther population. That causes a lot of genetic defects, mutations. It's very hard to come out of, and it's causing these cats to have a lot more issues with repopulation than if they had a broader gene pool to pull from. I would like to try and prevent that with the cassowaries. If we could get a little conservation area set up there to, we could hold, if there's a bird that's injured and just needs some time to heal before it goes back out to the wild, whatever the case may be, something that we can ultimately help that gene pool from being diminished anymore.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing. Things continue to grow. Definitely sounds like it would be a great.
Yes, and to my knowledge, there is a large conservation organization in Australia called C4, which they protect the cassowaries. But that's Australia. That's the southern cassowaries on the Australia beach, which is great. We want to protect them too. But to my knowledge, there is no conservation for the actual island of Papua New Guinea and the other, the cassowaries there. And it's very primitive, to my understanding. It's a island inhabited mostly by native people, and very primitive. I'm not sure if there's like a touristy area or anything there, but I can't wait. I don't. It's one of those things, like, I want to go and experience it for myself, and whatever it has to offer, I don't want to look into it too much other than the cassowary aspects. Yeah.
That is amazing.
I actually was going to try and get another video up today or tomorrow, as we did have some exciting news to share.
Well, what is that exciting news? Are we going to get something that's breaking?
Yes, actually hasn't been made public. I'll talk first. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of you, but I mentioned the northern cassowaries, and that Papua New Guinea is the only place on Earth that you can see all three species, to my knowledge. They may have all three in a zoo in Europe somewhere. I'm not sure. However, we are the only organization in the U.S. that has northern cassowaries. There are 3 northern cassowaries in the U.S., and they all live here. Northern cassowaries come in 2 colors. They come in red and blue, like the southern cassowary, and they come in yellow, red, and blue. The yellow, we have 2 yellows and 1 red and blue. So I have 2 males and 1 female. Our yellow male and female paired up this year very well. They have been together in the past, but they didn't really pair. So at this time, they're like, I'm so excited. I can't even believe it's happening. We actually have 3 northern cassowary eggs in the incubator.
Holy shit.
Yes, it's really, really big, because they have not been successfully bred in captivity. Maybe possibly at some point in time, there was a wild caught pair that was brought into California that was successfully bred in captivity, but it's like a note on a page somewhere. There's really no details. So we will be making history if we hatch a northern cassowary egg this season. And I was getting a little worried, because it is getting quite late in the season. They do breed later than the southern cassowaries. 2 years ago, she laid an egg on April 16th. So this egg I just got like a couple days ago. Like she just started laying like a week and a half ago. So it is very late. But yeah, we have 3 eggs in the incubator. They are doing wonderfully together. I have really high hopes for the eggs, and I am looking forward to posting that to our social media and posting updates as the eggs go along in incubation.
That is amazing. That's so awesome. You're essentially going to double the U.S. population potentially, and awesome.
Yes, yeah, I'm super excited. Partially because when we moved the birds here, I made a new plan for them based on what had happened in the past, what I had seen in the past at the previous facility. So I did kind of make a left turn and make some decisions about how to keep them that was very different from how they had been kept for the past 10 years. And I'm just very happy that it worked out and that it's working well. They are happy together. And the reason I'm saying that, actually, because people aren't going to know this either, cassowaries are solitary animals. They only come together in the wild for breeding. So during the breeding season, the female actually walks around and enters the male's territories. So she finds a male, enters his territory, they breed, she lays a clutch of eggs, and then he kicks her ass out. So at the beginning of breeding season, when you're introducing birds that are not already together, there's a potential for the female to kill the male because she does not deem him worthy. So this can be a problem, obviously, because then we have to go in with shields and break the birds apart and push them back into separate enclosures. At the end of breeding season, it's the male that will go after the female because he's saying, get the hell out. I need to raise my chicks. And even though he doesn't have any eggs, it's still an instinctual response for him that breeding season is over and you need to move on. So in the wild, the female would lay her clutch of eggs. The male would say, get the hell out. He would sit on the eggs, and the female moves on to another male and repeats the process.
She's getting around.
Yeah, so she could mate potentially with up to 5 males in the course of one breeding season.
Holy hell.
Which is another reason that we have this genetic overlap with the individuals on the island. You know, there's no way that there isn't some inbreeding going on. There's some theorizing that because these birds are so prehistoric, the genetic crossings, because they're not, it's not like brother and sister breeding or things like that, that there is some separation, that it hasn't inhibited the species this far. So, but yeah, they are very solitary animals. When I was introducing the northerns, or yellow northerns, in the past, the female is named Artemis and the male is named Piggy. And in the past, we've had issues where Piggy he's very skitsy. He gets nervous, he gets scared, he runs into a fence, which their beak fits through, but their head does not, so they will damage their cask if they get too riled up. So if she chases him at all, he's like, freaks out and runs. And in the past, that has been a major problem. This year, they went together, like, there's been a little bit of reminder. There's stuff like the male cassowary is not allowed to stand in front of the female cassowary. She will hiss at him and give him a quick boot to the butt. And it's one of their hierarchy things, but he is not allowed to walk or stand in front of her. So when you pair them up, something like that can go easily, like make a bird like Piggy freak out a little bit. And we were very fortunate that this year we didn't have a lot of those incidents. They paired up very well. It's going very nicely. They are sharing the nest, making the nest together. It's been really amazing to watch the course of events that have taken place up to even getting the eggs. But yeah, it's just, see, all this stuff is just so incredibly amazing to me. I could talk on it forever. Yeah, that's what I live for. That's my whole goal is to get the information out there so that everybody can learn about the species and why it's important to protect them. And you have to know about them to love them or be concerned about them. And the littlest detail, you never know how other people's minds work. the littlest detail could be what turns one person from, you know what, I didn't know anything about these birds, but that one thing, I really like that, and I want to look into them more. I want to see, maybe I could donate, $5 a month or whatever the case may be. I don't care if it goes to C4. I don't care if it goes to some other organization that's conserving cassowaries. If we get somebody to that point, that's the goal.
I would say you're doing a pretty good job.
I try my damnedest, that's for sure.
The cassowary isn't the
well, coming from like I said, we were originally a pig rescue. And then we actually started incorporating exotics. So we were pet pigs and exotic pets. We have, in the rat types, we have the cassowaries, emu, ostrich, and rhea. And we are hoping that we will have kiwi in the future. That would be the last of the rat types. It's a very small one. We do work with another conservation organization that has kiwi. We're hoping to be able to get a couple of them to complete our little rat type universe here in the next few years. But we are also still home to goats, pigs, chickens, ducks, geese, dogs and cats, 2 alpacas and a llama, Maddie the monitor lizard. And then we have, 3 raccoons, 2 coatimundis, a kinkajou, a skunk, 2 marmoset monkeys. Who am I forgetting? Yeah, there's lots of stuff here. We love them all. They were rescued, like I said, in our rescue days, and just because we've switched focus doesn't mean that the previous animals get kicked out, so to speak. We said that we would provide them a happy life for as long as it was necessary if they couldn't be adopted, and we stand by that statement. They will live with us until whenever they pass on over the rainbow bridge, or if somebody comes along that falls in love with them and can provide for them properly, then we will consider adopting them. But they all live here for now, so for sure. Actually, our skunk, her name is Flower, and she has done kids events in the past. She has done birthday parties and Boy Scout meetings and whatnot. She was the prize to a Cub Scout. I don't remember what it was, but they were like, if they sold over a certain amount of whatever tickets they were selling, they got a special surprise. And so I went, and they brought 3 kids out of the meeting. They got to pet the skunk and take a picture with the skunk.
All right. Well, I feel like it's a great time to move on to our favorite segment of the show, where things tend to get a little crazy, our wild stories segment. As our listeners know, this segment is really where things can go off the rail. There is no red tape to these stories. You tell everything as it is, full send, as we like to say. So Jessica, you have any crazy wild stories for us?
Well, I do have one, at least. It's a learning plus crazy story. We had a bird that was going out. We actually did an adult bird trade with another gentleman, and this bird was being shipped out. And due to laws for safety and everything, there are certain things that have to be completed before the animal can be transported out of the state. And one of those things is what's called an AI test, or an avian influenza test. So in order for the bird to get his CVI, which is a certificate for veterinary inspection for travel, they have to have a negative AI test. And the only way to get that test is a cloacal swab. So I have a pretty much full-grown adult cassowary that the vet needs to swab his butt. And I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to do this? So I had reached out to a vet friend of mine, and we decided on some pills to give him to try out. And we got lucky. The pills made him drunk for about 30 minutes. At which point I just jumped on him and tackled him to the ground. He's kicking and flailing, and I'm screaming at the vet, like, hurry up, stick it in his butt. It's just total mayhem. The poor vet was doing me a favor doing this. He had recently been in a car accident and could barely move his one arm that was still in rehab. And he's, poor guy, trying to get this swab of the cassowary butt while I'm trying to hold this bird down. I've got my arms and legs wrapped around this thing flailing on the ground. We somehow managed to, he's like, okay, I got it. And now it's, how do I get out of here? without getting hurt. It's ultimate craziness of possible death or dismemberment, not dismemberment really, but anytime you're working near those claws, it is definite insanity. We've had many experiences with boxing birds when they're going to be shipped where, there's the possibility of ending up on the wrong side of the shield with the bird against your body, and none of it compared to being on the ground with my arms and legs wrapped around this bird trying to figure out how to get up now because we had to stick a Q-tip in his butt.
I'm just thinking about this whole story from the bird's perspective of, oh my gosh, they got me drunk. Oh my gosh, they're up my butt. Oh my gosh, there's someone on top of me.
That poor thing probably thought he was abducted by aliens. He had stories to tell for sure. Lord, that was definitely a crazy experience for sure. That was.
Well, I think that story is a good way to start closing out the show and leave it on a high note of a cassowary getting a cloacal swab. So our listeners, I'm sure, are either overly interested, wondering what the hell is actually going on at this conservancy. How can they find out more or connect with you guys?
So definitely our website is cassowaryconservancy.org. You can find us as Cassowary Conservancy on pretty much any social media. You can email us. There's the email links on the website throughout social media. You can message us through social media. I think our phone number is available that way as well. We welcome anybody to reach out, just even if you have questions or want to schedule just a small talk to learn more about cassowaries. I'm happy to do that. We've had a couple of those in the past, just very interested parties. So yeah, we definitely have videos and whatnot that you can watch and learn more about us and the cassowaries on social media. So I would definitely recommend to hit that up. And our website has a lot of good information.
Yeah, I would highly suggest. It is awesome.
Thank you.
And how can people support? Is there a way they can reach out to donate?
Yeah, there's a donate button on our website. You can usually find donation links on social media. One of the easiest ways is definitely Zelle or PayPal. Donations can always be sent directly to donate@cassowaryconservancy.org. So that's a pretty easy one for most people. Again, there's definitely donate buttons throughout all our social media pages and on our website as well. So you can make sure you're getting to the right spot.
And hopefully help push you guys.
We do too. We are very much looking forward to that. I mentioned our perimeter fencing earlier. That is going to be one of our biggest needs for like the start of going to be open to the public. We want to make sure that everybody is nice and protected, safe. So you'll probably see some fundraising efforts for that going up pretty quickly or pretty soon here. That's definitely one of our biggest needs, especially as tomorrow, I believe it is, starts hurricane season, does it not?
Yeah, I think it does actually.
So that's our biggest concern. Being in Florida, we do have a treed property, like it is on and off with different types of trees. We have some oaks and pine trees. But the biggest cause for that perimeter fencing is if a tree or something came down in a hurricane and knocked down one of the cassowary fences where the cassowary was loose on site, it would still be contained within our property instead of being able to hop a 4-foot fence and leave the property, which could then endanger not only people, but definitely the bird, because who knows, where it's going to end up. If law enforcement gets involved, you don't know how that's going to go down. So that's definitely going to be our next goal for fundraising. So everybody knows now, just we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to create the safest environment for the animals. And we'll get that nice perimeter fence up and then start on our entryway for public to come in with parking and visitation. Move forward from there. Hopefully we can get that done within a nice, timely manner and start getting some visitors in here.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all that come to fruition.
Thank you. Me too.
Well, I think that is a good place to go ahead and wrap this episode. Thank you so much, Jessica, for the time today. There was so much to learn.
Yes, and like I said, I will talk forever about cassowaries and anything and everything. I'm very happy to teach people about them. They've been an amazing part of my life. I just want everybody to find that one thing that makes them special to them too.
Yeah, well,
Thank you. Me too.